So here's our fourth video on creating our simple iOS app for picking 6 lucky numbers. So we've noticed that we're using the model view controller software design pattern. In the first video, we created our view objects, which can be seen here in the simulator. The view objects are all the various controls and that the user sees and labels that the user sees and interacts with. In the second video, we created the internal engine that generated the lucky numbers, which was a model object. And then in the last video, the third video, we showed how to create outlets so that the controller has hooks to the view objects, and we showed how to create actions so that when the view objects are interacted with, the controller is informed, because these view objects are actually placed inside a nib file that is deserialized when the controller is created. So if we go back and look at the actual code, we can see that I'll bring up the simulator. So we can see that when the controller is loaded and all the objects in the nib file are deserialized, these button 1, button 2, button 3, these are IB outlets, and they are automatically hooked up to reference the various objects in the file. So in the nib file. So we had an outlet for each of our 6 number buttons. We had an outlet for our segmented control, right? So those are the outlets. Then we hooked up a set of actions. So when either the segmented control is selected or one of these other buttons is touched, the appropriate methods would get called. So you'll notice we created these methods here, and we showed how to do that in Interface Builder. So now we notice that first of all, the return value for these methods is IB action, which as far as the compiler is concerned means void, but is a special keyword so that the Interface Builder tool recognizes these are action methods. And you'll notice over here in the gutter on the left, you've got all these circles filled. That means that these outlets and actions have been hooked up already. So, and then we demonstrated, so we actually saw the actual bodies of the actions. And what we did is, just to show that they were working, we put in some log messages to see that they're actually working. So if you actually go and look at the simulator and I press like the segment of control, I can see the value gets changed. I pick the pick button, I can see that's happening, and as I touch each of these buttons, I can see that's happening as well. So I can see the actions are correctly hooked up as well. Now first of all, let's deal with the buttons. Now the problem here is we don't really know when a button is touched, we don't really know which number that corresponds with. So we have to have, since all of these buttons are tied to exactly one method. So what I'm going to do is go back into Interface Builder, and for each one of these buttons, I'm going to add a tag value. So if I go into the inspector for each one of these, so I'm going to click on the first button, and then you go down here under view. Every view can have a tag. So for the first button, I'm going to give it a tag of 1. Then I'm going to go to the second button and give it a tag of 2. The third button, give it a tag of 3, and so on and so forth. So button 4 will have a tag of 4. Button 5 will have a tag of 5, and button 6 will have a tag of 6. All right, so let's go ahead and save. And let me go back to this and go to button touched. So what I'm actually going to do is save that tag. So I'm going to grab the tag for the button and log it. So I'm going to go ahead and print that and say tag, and that'll tell us the tag of the button touch. Let me save. Let me go ahead and stop and rerun our view controller, or run the simulator. And so notice now when I touch the button, there's button 1 was touched, button 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now by just setting that simple tag, right, just a simple integer tag, we can know exactly which button it was that was touched. All right, so we already have this model object that's picking these lucky numbers, so we want to be able to set the button titles for that. So what I'm going to start by doing is create a method that's going to set all the number buttons. So I'm going to begin by creating a method. I'm going to call it set, so it's going to be void. I'm going to call it set all number buttons. And so just to show you this working, so what I'm going to do is, so button 1 is an outlet, so I'm going to actually send it a message. And what I do is, then the message I'm going to send it is set title for state. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set the button title to its corresponding number. So I need to create a string. So string with format. String with format, and the format string I'm just going to be a simple integer format. And what I'm actually going to pass it, I'm going to find my lucky numbers. I'm going to ask my model object what the lucky numbers for number, in this case it is number 0. And for state, this is going to be for UI control state normal. There we go. All right. So that's for button 1, so number 0, and I'm going to do something that, you know, a good software engineer would tell you not to do. 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to just do a little cut and paste job here. 4, 5, 6, and change these to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have a method now called set number buttons. And just so I can reference it early in the code, I'm going to put it in the class extension so that we can see that. And then when the view is actually loaded, I'm going to go ahead and call that self set number. Oops, why is it not coming up? Oh, set all number buttons. Set all number buttons. Okay, there we go. Excellent. So let's just see what happens there. Right, so let's go ahead and stop and rebuild and run. So now we notice, aha, sure enough, whenever when it starts, we actually see our numbers. Now, of course, clicking on them doesn't really do anything yet. So let's first of all, and our pick doesn't do anything yet. So maybe we should do that. But first of all, I want to make sure it's consistent with the max value when the program loads. All right. So if we go to here, when we actually load this, right now I've been hard coding the initial max number to 49. It would actually be nice to actually get this from the segmented control. But since I have an actual outlet to the segmented control, I can actually fetch this value. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out which there's 2 indexes to my segment. I have 2 controls in my segmented control. So I'm going to get the index. Just call it index, and I'll say self dot max number segmented control dot selected segment index. So that's going to tell me which index in my segmented control. And so then I know from there my max value, if the index is equal to 0, then I know the max number was 49. Otherwise, I know the max value was 56. So I'm going to now use that for my maximum value. All right. So this is an advantage of actually creating my model object lazily. I know at this point, once the view is loaded, I know that my segmented control has been loaded, and I can query the current index, whether it was the 49 or 56 that was selected. And when I actually wait to that point to create my model object, I actually know what the corresponding maximum value is. All right. So now if I go down to let's go down to the pick button. So whenever the user hits the pick button, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first call my model object to pick. some new lucky numbers for me. And then I'm simply going to call my set all numbers buttons. And now every time I click the pick button, I should get a new set of lucky numbers, right? So our model object will generate some new numbers, and then we'll update all the number buttons. Let's give that a go. All right, so here we go. And I'm going to click the pick button. So now notice we're going to get a whole new, every time I hit the pick button, I get a new set of 6 numbers. All right, so what about when we click individually on one of these buttons? Okay, all right, so let's look at button touched. And let's handle that. So in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and figure out which lucky number. I'm going to call my model object. I'm told to pick a new number for the tag -1. So I'm going to pick a new lucky number just for that. And then I'm going to go ahead and reset the title on the button, right? So the sender is the actual button. So I'm going to say set title for state, and it's going to be the same business here. So I'll copy that down here, and it's going to be for tag -1, and for UI control state normal. And that should allow us to, so whenever an individual button is touched, let's give that a particular go. All right, so now if I click on an individual button, notice it picks a new lucky number. All right, so the only thing left here is to tie in the segmented control. What happens when the segmented control changes, right? So let's go into our action for segmented control. So first thing we need to do is we need to figure out the index for the segmented control. So I'm going to get that from the sender. I want to get the sender. Let's see, what's the method I'm looking for? Selected segment index. Right. So depending on the particular segmented index. Again, the max value here is going, my max number, I guess I should say, is going to be, depending on the index. If it's 0, then we know it's got to be 49. I'm using these hard-coded constants everywhere, not probably a good idea, but that's, so then I'm going to go ahead and tell the model lucky numbers that the, actually I'm just, set max number is going to be max number. And now at this point, once I've done that, then I'm going to go ahead and set all the numbers. So self set all number buttons. All right, so now whenever the segmented control changes, we should generate a new set of lucky numbers. And so here I have the model will actually generate the numbers, and then we'll actually reflect that by updating the button. So let's give that a spin, see how that goes. All right. So with this, so the pick button works, these buttons still work. Now what happens? So now notice now I get new numbers between 1 and 56. Yeah, sure enough, there even got a 56 for a second. I just pick on the other value, right? So now we've got most things all wired up, so our app is actually starting to work at this point. So we'll continue this app and do more polish, but it seems like now we got at least a basic app working.